Well, it still takes a bit of getting used to, but 2009 is now, of course, in the past. Over those 12 months, China drew worldwide attention for its fast economic growth, its cultural achievements and also its political influence. Now it's back in the spotlight. Figures show it's likely to overtake Japan to become the world's second biggest economy. What does change mean to Beijing? And what does a rising China mean to the world?
When it comes to welcoming the new year, Tokyo residents stuck close to old traditions. On January 1st, they began visiting temples and shrines to pray for luck and prosperity. Many who went to the He Shrine had the economy on their minds.
Economic recovery and stability in politics are the biggest problems facing Japan now.
A chill remains over Japan's economy. A 2.6% contraction in its gross domestic product is forecast in the first quarter. And adding to the pessimism, Japan is on course to lose its place as the world's second largest economy to China. For 2008, China raised its growth estimate to 9.6% from 9%. The country's 2008 GDP reached around $4.6 trillion, while Japan's was about $4.9 trillion. Given an estimate of more than 8% growth for China in 2009, accompanied by Japan's shrinking economy, China is poised to overtake Japan as the second largest. Chinese analyst Chen Fengying, who studies the world economy, says it's just a matter of time.
The prediction of China ousting Japan as the second largest economy is nothing new. Exchange rate variations make it hard to predict the precise timing of the change. But it's the trend. Now the replacement catches world attention largely because of the timing. While major developed countries are still struggling in the financial crisis, China has maintained steady, fast growth.
The U.S.-based Global Language Monitor searched printed and electronic media for trends in word usage for the past 10 years. The rise of China is the top news story of the decade, ousting the Iraq War and 9/11 attack. In France, China has become something of a fashion.
China's economic development is like a miracle. More and more friends around me go to Beijing and Shanghai.
French magazine Le Point knows the market well. It focused on China in its end-of-the-year special. With Chinese movie star Zhou Xun on its cover, the 81 pages presented a variety of aspects in Chinese society.
It seems that all of its southern China is in the spotlight in recent years. But behind the qualitative change is quantitative change. During the past 30 years since China adopted the reform and opening up policies, great achievements have been made. Despite the skepticism and criticism, China has chosen a unique development model that is suitable for its national situation.
But China's development causes mixed feelings. U.S. magazine Newsweek has published predictions for 2010 on its website. It says China's economy will collapse this year as easy money continues to flood China's stock and real estate markets.
The reports from Western media, whether objective or biased, reflect China's growing importance on the global stage. But despite all the rhetoric, China needs to be sober-minded about its own problems. Catching up with Japan in terms of total economic volume should not serve as cause for complacency. China is a developing country and will remain a developing country for a long time.
This is Beijing's West Railway Station. Every year ahead of the Lunar New Year, the world's biggest human migration begins from stations like these in China's big cities. Millions of migrant workers, after a year of hard work, head back to their villages. It's part of the process as China undertakes the world's largest scale of modernization and urbanization. With a population of 1.3 billion, any achievement, no matter how big, will become small. That includes total GDP. In 2008, China's per capita GDP was less than a tenth of Japan's, and it's only a third of the world's average. At last month's Copenhagen summit, Premier Wen Jiabao pointed out that in the light of international standard, there are still 150 million Chinese living below the poverty line. That means in China, 1 person in 10 is now living on less than $1.25 US a day.
China has 3 worlds. Its coastal areas are the first world, very developed. Shanghai can be compared to London and New York. Its central area is the second world. For example, Henan in central China is still a typical agricultural province, comparatively developed. The interior, like some remote areas in Gansu province, is least developed. China's complicated and unbalanced development situation makes it difficult for the outside world to get a real understanding of the country.
Time magazine announced a group of anonymous Chinese workers were runners-up for the Person of the Year in 2009. It credited China's economic success to the tens of thousands of workers who leave their hometowns to work in prosperous coastal cities. And that may best explain both the power and fragility of China's economy. But what does China's development mean to the rest of the world?
As China's GDP per capita ranges from 3,000 to 10,000 US dollars, China will begin to transform from a manufacturing economy to an expenditure economy. That will create a gusher of demand in economic sectors such as service. Now Europe, Japan and the US have great advantages in the service industry. China has huge potential to grow, and that brings the world opportunities.
Japanese businesses have begun to turn their eye to China. By the end of 2008, the number of Chinese online had surpassed the US to be the first in the world. Baiji.com is the first Japanese online store targeted at Chinese consumers. On its Chinese language homepage, it sells everything directly from Japan to China. The success of Baiji.com demonstrates Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama's understanding of China. He once said, China's economic development will bring Japan new opportunities. Japan's traditional strengths are in environmental protection and high tech. In these fields, Japan drives circles around China. But just like China's GDP figures, it's only part of the story.
Well, the world's most populous nation is in the throes of the greatest economic transformation ever seen. China's unprecedented and sustained high-speed growth has shattered preconceptions about the limits of expansion. But GDP figures alone can't explain everything. China is, of course, still a developing country and is grappling with the formidable task of making life better for its people while developing its economy. You're watching World Insight. Up next, we'll take a quick break, but then we'll take a look at the world's tallest skyscraper and Dubai's towering ambitions.